When Canon J. John was interviewed on TV and asked what he thought about miracles, I love his answer. He said this: the greatest miracle is that Jesus rose from the dead. The resurrection of Jesus authenticates everything he ever said and everything he ever did. When people ask me about other religions and philosophies, I say, what about them? Listen, if you're walking down the street and it branches into two and you don't know which way to go, there are two men lying there, one's dead, one's alive. Which one would you ask for directions? He says, the reason I am a Christian is that Jesus is alive. I'm guessing that's the same with you here today. You see, everyone you talk to will say they have a reason to live. A reason, great or small, why they get out of bed in a morning, do what they do, and live the way that they live. They have a reason to do that. It may be family. It may be to provide for the kids. It may be the mortgage. It may be a great job. It may be to be famous. I tell you, some folks, some mornings, the reason I get up in the morning, I'm hungry. Simple as that. I want my breakfast. It may be that you get up in the morning because you have a great humanitarian cause to work towards, or to see as much of the world that you can see. The reason I live, the reason I am a Christian, is that Jesus is alive. Matthew 7:24, we are reading verses from the Sermon of the Mount at the moment. And let me just read you the verses that we're going to be looking at for a little while just for today. Matthew 7, Jesus, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built, or a wise woman, who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man or woman who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. As you know, we've been in the Sermon of the Mount, and it describes what life looks like in Jesus' kingdom. It describes the attitudes and the appetites of individuals who place themselves under the loving heavenly rule of their heavenly Father. It describes kingdom culture. Look around this room, and we noticed, didn't we, and we can notice even today, that we all bring different cultures into this lovely mix. The ways our lives have been shaped perhaps by our culture, one culture or another. We may come from Italy or Nigeria or Moldova or Sri Lanka. We've got a few Scots in and Welsh in as well, and one or two English in too, and French and Indian and so on. The list was a long list of about 18 different cultures on one Sunday service just a few weeks ago. But we've been reminded again in recent weeks that as great as our cultural influences have been, kingdom culture trumps all other cultures. Jesus paints a really famous picture in our text today. As I drive here every day I come up the motorway, up the M6, I am regularly tempted by a big blue and yellow box just off the M6 called IKEA. And I bet most of us at some point or another have bought a flat pack piece of furniture. You see, when we open that box, you and I will do one of three things, all right? Some of us know better than the instructions. And so the first thing we do is throw them away. Some of us will look at the written instructions in detail, get the information, and start to build. Then some of us will ignore all the long-winded, wordy bit, and we'll just look at the pictures. Which one are you? Hands up, who throws them away? Well, one or two of us, we do, don't we? We know better. Who reads them and does what they say? Oh, you look at you, good. Yeah, who looks at the pictures? Oh, could have put money on that. You see, up to our text today, Jesus has given us some incredibly clear instructions. And he says, I want you to know this about money. I want you to know this about marriage. Jesus says, I want you to know about how to deal with people you don't get on with. I want you to know about anger. I want you to know how to deal with lust. I said that word in a pulpit. I want you to know how to deal with giving. I want you to work out how to work out this thing called worry. I want you to fast. And then he paints a picture, a parable of two different ways that people can respond to his instructions to what he's taught. In life, you'll come across spenders and you'll come across savers. Who's a spender? Who's a saver? You'll come across introverts and extroverts. Who's an extrovert? Give us a woo. Yeah. Who's an introvert? Give us a whisper. Yeah. There are larks. There are early risers and owls, late night people. Who's a lark? Who's up at dawn? Yeah. Who's an owl still working at 11 o'clock midnight? Yeah, fantastic. The amount of texts I get from some of our team who are working late at night, it's incredible. But Jesus adds another pair of categories. He says that there are wise people and foolish people. Who are wise people? Oh, let's not go there because my next question isn't going to be good, is it? You see, Jesus compares the attitudes and the appetites of two different kinds of people. Let's focus, though, on today on what unites them, what these two types of people actually have in common rather than what separates them. Firstly, my point is this: everyone builds something. The Bible sometimes uses metaphors to describe how we choose to live. It says that we're like runners in a race. It says that we're like warriors in a battle, that we're farmers, like farmers who sow seed. But here it is saying that we're like builders who build a house. Building a physical house is something that Mark has always wanted to do. He loves engineering. He loves design. He loves programs like Grand Designs, And the marriages that fail, I tell you, I'm not going there as a result of these projects they get into. The world's extraordinary houses. Have you seen that? Some incredible places. But in all fairness, building a physical house is something that the rest of us, that we will perhaps never, ever have to do, thank the Lord. But here's my question. What are you building? You see, in this story, Jesus tells us that it's not just the wise man who is building. The foolish man is building something as well. And the question is not, rather, are you building? The question is, what are you building? Because whether you're wise or foolish, we're all building something. What are you building? What kind of family are you building? What kind of friendships are you building? What career, what life, what integrity are you building into your life and those around you? You see, even if you're a lazy person, you're still building something. You're building a life without purpose, aren't you? If you're apathetic, you're building a life without passion. If you're careless, you're still building something, and it'll be just something that's likely to fall apart around your ears. But if you're wise, Jesus says you'll build something that lasts, that's strong, that has influence, that has value, something that may even outlast your life. Paul, when he writes to the church in Corinth, in 1 Corinthians 3, he says everyone should build with care. Invest in the build and be wise with the materials you use. What kind of house are you building? The word used for house, it's not just a metaphor for your life, but it also is a metaphor for your legacy. In the Old Testament, you'll read the phrase, the house of David. That's not just talking about a literal little house that he lived as a shepherd boy in it, or later on a massive palace. It's talking about his family. He's talking about that when it says house of David, it's talking about his descendants, the legacy he left behind, his lineage, the people who benefited from how he lived and what he had done, even though they may never have met him. See, your house isn't just your life. It's your legacy. The thing that you're passing on to the generation that follows on from you. Please don't think about it when you're old and drawing your pension. Please don't think about it towards the end. Think about it today. Think about it as teenagers, as 20s, 30s, and whatever age you are, think about your legacy. Teenagers serving in our kids' church and teaching us some of the things they're learning on tech, and even in our sound and department over the back. We're learning from people even like Leo, who's only in his young teens, youngsters. It's all part of their legacy. 18 or 80, everyone in this room, intentional or not, is building something. So we're all building something. And secondly, everyone chooses what they build on. You see, it's possible that once built, those two men in our stories today built two houses very similar. They didn't have all the different designs that we have nowadays. But the long-term stability of those houses was determined by the foundation they built their houses on. The wise man built his house upon the wise man. Come on, Jean, join me. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the house on the rock stood firm. It didn't fall flat, no. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. And it goes on, and the house on the sand fell flat. Kids' stories, songs that we learned many years ago, some of us. And with that picture in mind, Jesus says the quality of what we build our lives on depends on what we do with what we've heard. Both men build a house. Both hear Jesus' words, if you like. But it's only the wise man who actually does something about what he's heard. He builds a firm foundation for his life. In effect, Jesus says hearing and doing are both really important. Over the years, I've lived in a family that struggles to hear. Anybody else? The telly's on, the earphones are in. They can be zoned out of the room, pulling faces at someone on Snapchat across the town. And there are times that I just seem to have repeated myself. It's a bit past tense now because they're all grown up and probably still doing it, to be honest. But I seem to just repeat myself and nobody hears. Will someone feed the dog? Silence. No hearing. No doing. Will someone empty the dishwasher while we're out, please? Silence comes the reply. No hearing, no doing. Anyone else had similar experiences with their kids, their wives, their husbands? But amazingly, a miracle occasionally happens in our house. When at about 8 o'clock of an evening, I might just occasionally say, does anybody want an ice cream? Even now. And suddenly it's like the deaf hear, the lame walk to the freezer. Miracles still happen. You see, Jesus says that if we want the best foundation for our lives, hearing his teaching and doing it, putting it into practice is the best foundation that we could ever build our lives on. And that may be quite radical for some, but he says hear it and get on with it. Do it. He actually expects us to do it, folks. He never asks us to do something we can't do with his help. He doesn't want us to just be sermon addicts, jumping from one international sermon podcast or a Zoom call or whatever it might be to another on YouTube, jumping around churches to get the best experience that we can get and another sermon. Christian TV, church, Elim Stafford is not here to entertain you. It's here to inspire you. It's here to challenge you to put Jesus' words into action and get doing it. Get living it. Not just in here, but out there where it counts. To get building. Don't be content with hearing overload, folks. Start doing. Start investing. Start building. I'm not talking about building bricks. I'm talking about building. Kingdom building. People building. The best compliment you could ever give me as your pastor, as a preacher, isn't at the door, oh, lovely sermon, Helen, thank you very much, as you leave on a Sunday, and a little smile. Although that's helpful and encouraging. But it is actually about doing something with what we've said. Jesus looked those people in his audience that day in the eye, and he expected them to do something with what they'd heard, to put something into practice, to adopt kingdom culture. See, there are people who actually build their lives on sand. Did you know that? Every so often we're shown the houses in Norfolk, aren't we? On the east coast of England, on the news. They've been cracking and moving for years, and now literally they're falling into the sea. In 2013, one lady bought a house on the coast. She liked the view. Listen, think on that. She liked the view. Within 6 days of buying it, it fell into the view. £154,000 worth of house fell into the sea. 6 days. 6 days after she built it. Bought it. You see, I get upset when my toilet leaks. I get upset when the dog shakes himself in the kitchen. These folks are losing everything into the sea. Folks, there are people who still literally build houses on sand because they like the view. See, there are people who are building their lives on sand because they like the view. They like what Jesus says. They appreciate his view. They've heard bits of his teaching over the years. They like the sentiment of doing good and living generously and prayerfully. They like the view. They like the idea of a God who loves them, a heaven after death, but they've never considered what that view means. They've never loved him back. They never accepted and trusted that there is only one name, the name of Jesus, that can assure us of that heaven after death. They've never put any of this into practice. They've never said, okay, this is good, solid stuff. I don't just like this view. I need to live in this view. This is stuff that I've been searching for all my life. This is what I am going to build my life on. They've never said it. And then life storms blow in, and like a house that's built casually and quickly on sand, their worlds fall apart. They collapse. Folks, Jesus offers you and me a different way to build. Diligently, deliberately, opening our Bible, following the instructions. We figure out how to live, to do what Jesus says. Why? Because it works. See, wise people, bear with me, I've just hit the wrong button. Wise people lay rock-like foundations by hearing and then doing what Jesus has asked them to do. Some people get stuck. They get hung up on how much more they need to know. I need deeper teaching. Many people in church life, the church doesn't teach deep enough. Folks, are you doing it? I don't need deeper teaching. I need to live it. I need to live the bit I know well. Jesus, I don't think, was deep. It was all very simple. The trouble is following it and doing it. What are you doing, folks, with the bit that you know? What will you do with the simple, profound, life-changing, foundation-building stuff in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount that you're reading throughout these weeks? Wise people take on the teaching of kingdom culture rather than the culture of the world. And because they do that, they're able to stand even when the storm hits home. So it could be said, I guess, a foundation of foolishness is found when there's hearing but no doing. A wise foundation is found when hearing and doing collide. Folks, it's your choice. Choose wisely. Because let's face it, everyone faces the same weather, don't they? Both builders, not just a foolish chap, experience the same weather. Stafford, Oldbury, every church youth group on that camping field yesterday, Believe you me, I know it. I'm still a little bit wet and damp after that. We faced the same lashing down rain as we put all those tents up. Everything in me wanted to rush it, quickly get out of there and get home. But yesterday, more guide ropes were required, not less. More thought was required, more teamwork was required, not less. You see, Jesus knows that the storm of life, family breakdowns, job losses, death, heartache, sickness, financial pressure actually hits us all at some point. Every house, every life, no matter how godly we are, no matter how wise, no matter how long we've been on this journey. We all know that bad things just happen sometimes to good people. And in this world, Jesus said, we will have trouble, bad weather. What you've built your life on really doesn't matter too much when the sun's out, does it? Well, life's incredibly lovely, but it's incredibly important when the storms come. That's when you discover the cracks. You see, how you've built and how you've built your life, what you've built your life on will have an incredible impact on how you will withstand and stand in the most testing crises and most powerful, painful storms of life. I've got friends in Ukraine today. And you know what? Even when the bombs are dropping and the drones are flying over, they still stand. Jesus is still their rock. Still their rock. What are you building on? We used to sing an old song, didn't we? An old hymn. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. And folks, so we're going to take communion today. We're going to sing today. We're going to come around communion table and we're going to determine in our hearts again afresh. Maybe even for the first time, if you're new to church today, if this is all new to you, maybe you'll decide even today that your life needs something more solid to build on. You see, that example of how Jesus built and lived his life, the way he approached the storms of rejection and loss and grief and abandonment and rejection and persecution, an unjust trial, a flogging to within an inch of his life, and ultimately the kind of brutal, slow, humiliating death reserved for criminals on a cross shows us how building wise is done. He didn't crumble. He didn't run. He didn't fall under the extreme pressure. Jesus promises in our text this morning, build on the rock, you will not fall. On that first resurrection Sunday, the only rock that moved was the one that it took a gang of men to put in place 3 days before. On that first resurrection morning, on this Sunday morning, Jesus promises to be that immovable, unbudgeable, unshakable rock for you. He says, hear my words. Do something with them. Apply them to your life, your speak, your thinking. No matter the life storm, you won't crack under the pressure. You won't give up on your faith. You won't shake your fist at God when life gets tough. You'll hold on to him instead. You won't back off. You won't run away because not even death will cause you to fall. Folks, everyone builds something. Everyone makes the choice as to how. And everyone is affected by the weather. What are you building? Who are you building on? Who are you building with? Jesus invites you to invest in his kingdom culture, its appetites, its attitudes, a place where heaven touches earth. Will you reconsider again today? Will you assess your plans and your building work in your life today and allow him to even resurrect you? Will you submit to his loving heavenly rule, his plan, and start to build something that will last eternally? A life that lasts and leaves a legacy. Will you build your life on him? Everything he was and is, everything he said and continues to say, everything he did and everything he still does today. Would you bow your heads with me, folks? We're going to come around communion. Thank you for listening this so well. I would just love us to just follow on from some of the things that we've heard in the last 20 minutes or so. Maybe God is nudging you about something today. See, my prayer for every one of us in this room, everyone in our neighborhood, everyone in our town is simply this. We have one life. We have one life. Build it intentionally. We have one life. Build it with courage and diligence and wisdom. Build it on a firm foundation, on kingdom culture, and ultimately on the promise that a life built on Jesus not only leaves a legacy for others to follow, but it promises resurrection for you and resurrection for me. And this is why we take communion. This is why we come again with grateful hearts to communion today. Whether it's for the first time, whether it's for the millionth time, this is why we come. It's a commitment to build, a commitment to resurrection, a commitment to build on Jesus, the solid rock.